My name's Nicole Kurz. I'm the VP of Precision Marketing at Digital Health Strategies, and I have the honor of being the session sponsor this morning and introducing your speakers. So before we get started, I'm supposed to tell you all to silence your cell phones. If you're like me, you did that in probably 16 and haven't turned it back on since, but I did my due diligence there. And I'm really excited today to introduce our two speakers, Gabe and Cameron, who are going to talk with you about navigating healthcare analytics. Gabe Watson is joining us from WashU Medicine, where he's the Executive Director of Digital Strategy and Analytics. He leads their digital initiatives, enhancing consumer experience across their segments. Cameron Hauser is from Modea. She's the analytics practice leader, and she leads the team focused on delivering HIPAA compliance managed analytics solutions. So everyone, please enjoy your session.
All right, thank you, Nicole, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here on the last day of the conference. I'm really excited to share all of the great work that Gabe and I have been collaborating on over the past few months now. So as Nicole mentioned, my name is Cameron Hauser. I am the practice lead at Modea. We are a digital consultancy focused on healthcare, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Gabe from WashU Medicine. So today's session, we're going to walk through 3 parts. First, we're going to start off with what unified insights really means for healthcare and why they matter. Then we're going to move into how we evaluated and selected the right analytics platform in a post-GA4 HIPAA-aware way. Lastly, we're going to talk through our plan and how we're putting analytics into action, along with the lessons that we've learned along the way. So this isn't a theoretical case study. This is the roadmap that we used, so we hope that it sparks some ideas for you and your organization. Before we dive in, I'm going to pass it over to Gabe, who's going to tell you a little bit more about WashU Medicine.
Thanks, Cameron. I agree. Thanks for being here today on a Friday. I think congratulations on making it to the last hour of sessions. We all need to get back to the airport and try to catch up on some of that work we've been trying to do while here. So again, before we get into the presentation, I did want to tell you a little bit about WashU Medicine. We were founded in 1891 at St. Louis, Missouri, one of the oldest medical institutions west of the Mississippi. We are an AMC in partnership with BJC Healthcare. With our tripartite mission, we aim to shape the future of medicine through our research, education, and patient care. We are one of the largest academic clinical practices in the U.S. with over 2,000 clinical faculty representing 78 specialties and subspecialties, and we serve as the physicians and educators for Barnes Jewish Hospital, St. Louis Children's Hospital, Siteman Cancer Center, and 130 clinics across Missouri and Illinois. And we are consistently recognized among the nation's top institutions for research. So that's the boilerplate stuff. We're also, with our tripartite mission and our ecosystem, over 1,000 websites. Actually, we're over 1,200 websites. And before we turned off Google Analytics, any site that decided that they wanted to have Google Analytics ran it independently, and they each had their own account. Some individuals would log in just to see every other month how their traffic was doing, what were some of their key pages, all the way up to very sophisticated dashboards. We had clients obviously using UTMs to check their marketing and actually making business decisions. So wide spectrum of usage of our Google Analytics platform. So a big win for us, no matter what, was going to be to start to centralize our data. And we'll get into more of that here in a little bit, but I will turn it back over to Cameron.
Thanks, Gabe. So we're going to kick this off by grounding ourselves in the bigger picture. So as I mentioned before, we're going to talk about and define unified insights, why it matters, and then we're going to sort of remind ourselves of where we are in terms of the modern ecosystem involved in analytics related to changes in technology, regulation, and the need to better understand our patient engagement with our digital properties in a more holistic way. So, what are unified insights? When we say unified insights here, what we really mean is the ability to see the full patient journey across all platforms. Websites, mobile apps, patient portals, scheduling tools, whatever digital touch points your organization has. Historically, like Gabe mentioned, healthcare systems have operated in silos, and their data strategy has reflected that, with each team owning its own website or portion of a website, and each group collecting their own analytics. When the strategy is set up in this way, there is no easy way to stitch together the data. But patients don't experience us in silos. They move fluidly between our touch points, and our analytics really needs to reflect that. Unified analytics, what we should expect from that, we should expect to be able to map the full journey so we can understand where patients are engaging and where they're dropping off. We needed to understand friction points like confusing navigation or issues with logins. And most importantly, we need to be able to do all of this in a HIPAA compliant way with patient privacy and consent at the center. Ultimately, this kind of visibility across teams and across our organizations, from marketing to IT, will allow us to make smarter, faster decisions that improve our overall patient experience with our digital tools. All right, this slide is, I'm pretty sure this is going to resonate with a lot of us. This is our lived experience all the way back to 2020. So I'm just gonna kind of walk us through the challenges in this space and where we've been, how we've been working through it, and kind of where we are now and current state. So taking us back to October 2020, after most of our clients had been using Universal Analytics for upwards of a decade, Google announced their next generation analytics platform, GA4. We all ignored this in October of 2020. We did not really start taking this seriously until March of 2022, when Google announces that UA is going to be sunsetting at July 1st of 2023, giving us only a couple of months to update our measurement strategy in order to not disrupt our data and to continue to be able to do year-over-year analyses. So pretty short notice from Google, but they did warn us back in 2020, so it's a little bit on us too. So this one's not on here, but in November of 2022, speaking from my experience in the consulting space and analytics, at this time, we had migrated our clients. You know, we felt really confident that we had them set up really well in GA4, and then December 2022 happens, and we get the biggest wrench thrown into our strategy, which is when HHS released that guidance that basically said, like, hey, y'all can't be sending your data to Google Analytics. It's more nuanced than that, but that really was the take home. And that's when legal and compliance really started to pay attention and get involved. And this is the point that really sparked the different journeys that we've seen the different organizations take. We've received some updated guidance in March of 2024, where we got some clarification, and waters got muddied a little bit in June of 2024, when the Texas District Court ruled that HHS had overstepped in their guidance. But ultimately, the writing it's on the wall. You know, we need to be better stewards of the data that our patients entrust with us, and finding a HIPAA compliant solution, even with the gray area and unclarity in some of these areas, is still a priority for all of our clients. So where we are now, I think every healthcare organization has had to define their own path forward, and that's what we're here to unpack WashU Medicine's story today. So WashU Medicine did a full platform evaluation, and that's what I'm going to walk you through here today is our approach. Given the complexity of the landscape, we knew we needed to use a structured approach not only to select a tool, but also to ensure the long-term success of this tool. So we started off by defining detailed requirements. And this meant going beyond feature checklists of these different tools and really listening to the needs of our end users, technical teams, marketers, and compliance stakeholders. And we approach this by conducting stakeholder interviews, which we'll talk about in a minute. Next, we did a full evaluation of analytics platforms against those identified requirements, not only looking at the capabilities, but also how they fit within our ecosystem and current tech stack, as well as the risk posture for the organization. We also knew this was just the beginning, so we also began to develop an implementation plan early in the process in order to make sure that we had mapped out the technical dependencies, how we were going to approach rollout and phasing, and the internal resources needed to not only implement this tool, but also maintain it for long-term success. As we started assessing our options, we realized that the ecosystem of HIPAA-compliant analytics solutions really breaks down into two distinct categories, not just in terms of tools, but also in terms of strategic approach. So how you get to compliance, you can kind of take two different avenues. You can choose an analytics platform. This is where the vendor hosts the tool and they'll assign a BAA. Or you could also even go a self-hosted open source route as well. But ultimately, the HIPAA compliance happens at the platform level. The second option is what I'm going to call a compliance layer solution. These are often CDP or consumer data platform type solutions that serve as intermediaries that collect the behavioral data first in a HIPAA compliant way before stripping identifiers and then forwarding the sanitized data to a downstream analytics platform that you likely don't have a BAA with. And I will say a generalization here and an assumption here, most of the time this means your analytics platform is Google Analytics GA4. So in tandem with choosing how you're going to get to HIPAA compliance, there's another major decision that you need to be considering along the way, and that's related to your measurement strategy. And here, again, there are two fundamentally different approaches, which I'm going to break down now. So these approaches are what I'm calling auto capture and precision tracking. Precision tracking is Google Analytics, so keep that in mind as I walk through these. Auto capture is maybe one that you're not as familiar with. Auto capture is a type of measurement strategy that collects everything within some parameters that you've defined based on your risk posture. So it collects every click, page view, form fill without requiring manual tagging. The pros of this approach means faster setup, lower maintenance, more flexibility for exploratory analysis, but some of the cons include data overload. In my mind, that's the biggest con of this approach. If you choose this type of approach, it's really important that you've identified your goals and core business questions in advance. Otherwise, you might be overloaded with data and struggle to really activate the data collected from that tool. On the other hand, we have precision tracking. So the example is GA4. In theory, this is a more curated approach where you define exactly what is tracked, and what is tracked should be based on your goals. So this would lead to cleaner data and less overload in that sense, because you know that everything you've collected you set up intentionally. Some of the cons here is that they tend to be higher maintenance. They're pretty inflexible in terms of limited ability to retroactively define events or correct events that break due to front-end changes. So it requires a lot more effort up front and more coordination and ongoing maintenance. Neither approach is inherently better than the other. It really depends on your team's capacity and how much flexibility you need. So going forward, I'm going to reference three main categories. Compliance layer, with the assumption that the platform is Google Analytics, analytics precision, and analytics auto capture. I don't know if y'all got the prompt. This is my first time doing a poll, but there is a poll for this session that asked, which type of solution did your organization choose? So we can kind of see, how we're all shaking out in our individual journeys to find the right analytic solutions. All right. Now that we understand unified insights, we're going to get into our first step, and arguably the most important, which was to define our detailed requirements. So we started off with an initial long list of 22 platforms. This was our first pass at trying to identify all of the potential viable solutions. A lot of these got eliminated as we generated this list, but we ultimately had a really great comprehensive starting point for every single type of solution that we should be considering. To refine the list, we conducted stakeholder interviews. And we conducted stakeholder interviews with 6 different groups. Most of them were held using virtual meetings, but some groups we sent out surveys or communicated ad hoc via emails. So our first group are the end users. This is my favorite group. They're the ones who are going to be working with this tool every day. They're the ones who really understand what the pain points were with previous platforms, and their input is very valuable here, given that they're the ones who will be most involved with this tool. Analytics leads were people who are often looking at what the end users have created for them. So these are people who are looking at the data either in dashboards or maybe directly previously in the Google Analytics UI. We had IT stakeholders. We needed to talk to them around governance, maintenance, and data warehousing for this tool. We wanted to talk to marketing leads, so these were the people who were responsible for answering to leadership around ROI. Of course, for HIPAA compliance purposes, we needed to involve legal and compliance to make sure that we're covered from a BAA standpoint. And lastly, our external stakeholders, those are other third-party agency partners. We included them in a survey format so that we could verify that whatever tool we selected would be able to support their data requirements as well. Gathering input across roles and responsibilities, we made sure the solution would meet real-world needs, not just theoretical ones. That upfront alignment made the rest of the process pretty easy and straightforward. Now, you might be wondering, that 6 different stakeholder groups, how do you identify all of those different people? Who gets included in the conversation? And that is where I'm going to pass it over to our WashU Medicine expert to explain how we approach this.
Thanks, Cameron. Yeah, so we were really excited to get going. Modea did a great job of saying, here's all the angles of the elephant that we need to look at. But then it's kind of like, all right, we need to step back and understand who is who that we need to get. I had been in my position for about 6 months, and I needed to understand who we were talking with. So we did focus in, as Cameron said, on end users and marketing leads. I think you definitely want to go out and find what are their key goals, what are they currently tracking. We just want to understand what's important to them. We kind of looked over some of the individuals that were obviously not using Google Analytics as well as they could have been, because we were very confident that we could meet their needs. So that said, though, some of those groups are more important in other ways, so it was very good to keep them informed, tell them about the process, send out emails, meet with them in Marcom Council meetings to build that transparency and trust while we went through this process. The other thing that I was, the first to try to figure out, and I was like racking my brain, is, oh yes, the IT side of stuff. We really have to partner with them more so than we ever had, right? If you use Google Analytics to make a bunch of marketing decisions, typically it's you and your agency and your leadership, but you definitely have to figure out what APIs you're going to be feeding into, and ultimately where the data is going to be stored. Which I'll get into a key takeaway that I had later on. But what I would say is data warehouse becomes very important at this stage of the game too, and you have to understand that from the very beginning to understand if it's internal, external, what you're going to be dealing with there. What I can tell you is we ended up with about 25 key stakeholders that we spoke to. And then once we did that, we kind of narrowed it down to who were the all-stars that needed to be in the room, and we had about 8 people on our selection committee.
So now I'm going to walk you through sort of a high-level summary of what these different groups were interested in when we spoke with them. So I'll start with end users. From end users, we learned that they wanted faster time to insights with robust, out-of-the-box analytic capabilities. They wanted flexible dashboards, they wanted cleaner data, and they really, really, really wanted to be heard about the lessons learned from the UA to GA4 migration and all the pain points they had struggled with GA4. Analytics leads, their focus was a little bit different. They were interested in making sure that we would be able to accurately track KPIs. They were interested in potential for automation and process improvement, and they were very concerned with governance capabilities. So understanding who would have access and what levels of access would be available to the different groups who would be leveraging this platform. IT and technical teams, they had a lot of concerns about platform risk, making sure that we had a way to evaluate these platforms appropriately. They were concerned about infrastructure fit, data ownership, ownership of the platform, budget, and timeline. And they were particularly interested in what their role was in this, would be in this process. Marketing leads, very similar to analytics leads, but their focus was more on marketing. So marketing teams, they wanted to understand how they would be able to track ROI, patient behavior, campaign performance, all without increasing compliance risk. They also had a lot of interest in understanding how this tool would be able to integrate into the CRM and other marketing strategies.
And I just wanted to speak to the compliance and legal one too, because I will say that is very important in the sense of, I would say, just as you're looking at technology and you're looking at the vendor of what you want and how you need it to perform, compliance and legal, the two big things here are the risk review and the BAA. You definitely want to understand your organization's risk tolerance, how conservative are they? And you want to understand the vendors that you're working with and their risk tolerance and the liability that they're willing to take on. What I can tell you is you definitely want to start talking about that at the very beginning, because depending on the users that you have coming to your website, the size of the contract, there are a lot of moving parts that come into that you want to make sure that the right people are taking care of that from the beginning. So we involved them early and often. And then they came in again at the end to redline and to truly confirm what our agreement was going to look like. But what I will say is, do not punt on this till the end. Bring them in at the very beginning.
And then lastly, our external stakeholders. This was a survey, but we made sure to take not only their data requirement considerations into account, but we also asked them for their tool preferences in terms of, were there any tools that they had experience with that we should be prioritizing or considering more than we would have otherwise. All right, once we had all of our detailed requirements, we moved into the evaluation phase. So here's where we started to develop our shortlist. These 3 bullet points here are the actual categories that we included in our analysis. They kind of generally cover 3 themes. The first one is related to the analytics platform capabilities. The second one is more about the vendor, the product support, the HIPAA posture, and sort of total cost of ownership considerations. And then the last one that really stood out was the user experience. To make sense of all of these options, we used a scorecard approach to evaluate each solution across these common criteria. So this is an example of this is our scorecard. It's only showing you two of the categories here, data requirements and analytical capabilities. And you can see I've included scoring for our shortlist platforms here. So we evaluated a analytics auto capture solution, an analytics precision solution, and then we actually ended up evaluating two different compliance layer solutions as well. And you may be wondering, how did we compare the compliance layer solutions to an analytics platform solution fairly? In order to do that, we used GA4 as a control. So you can see that in green as our last column. So we did this so that we could fill in the gaps of where a compliance layer is not going to have analytical capabilities. So for that portion, we filled in what the GA4 experience would be, since that's the platform that would be leveraged in this case. That was a really helpful way to approach this analysis because it helped us understand what we were gaining and what we were losing by using a compliance layer approach. And it also allowed us to compare our other solutions to our previous experience with GA4. And it highlighted, based on our detailed requirements, where we were going to gain the most, and if there were any areas that we were really going to have to adapt our processes around because we wouldn't have the same or similar functionality. After we did the scorecard evaluation, there were some very clear options that we decided we needed to explore further, and we did this through demos with the vendors themselves. We demoed three different one platform and two different compliance layer solutions. I've combined them here just to simplify what we learned. So from the analytics auto capture solution, the biggest pro we found was the user friendliness. This was a big hit with the end users. They really loved the advanced analytical capabilities, and the high data volume from auto capture included some really cool AI-enabled features, like being able to flag potentially missing steps in your user journey based on, they've collected it all, and it can kind of see, like, hey, there's this information that you haven't categorized. Is this important? So really cool AI-enabled features in the platform. The ease of implementation. This platform, you add a snippet to the site, and it begins data collection right away. Our end users loved the idea of getting their data back. They've been in the dark for a long time, so that was a really big pro here. This solution also had really robust onboarding offerings. So this auto capture is a less familiar measurement strategy, so this was really important in this case. This platform also had really great governance features, and we felt like it had a really strong value in how well it mapped to our detailed requirements. The cons here are that this is an analytics-only solution. It has more basic ad integration, so there are some features lost compared to Google in terms of Google had native integrations with other Google platforms. The compliance layer solutions, the things we really liked about these two options, one of these options was in the healthcare space, and one of these options was a leader in the CDP space. So they both had streamlined BAA processes, which was great. One of them provided more advanced ad integration options. And then the leader in the space, we saw a lot of potential for future work. And I will say one of our considerations here is that our auto capture has integrations with both of our compliance layers, so it's not always an and/or type question. So we saw the future potential for a lot of these tools. Both of these tools had very strong integration capabilities. The biggest con for compliance layers in this particular scenario is the GA4 dependence. The WashU Medicine stakeholders were very clear about their frustrations with that analytics platform. They were very excited about enterprise analytics tools that had solved for a lot of those pain points. So they definitely found that GA4 dependence to be the strongest con. Limited documentation, that's a function of limited documentation from GA4 and limited documentation about the interactions between the compliance layer and GA4. Because there's so many integration capabilities, you don't get detailed documentation about your specific niche area that you're interested in. So it would take a lot more work to get up to speed on how to utilize these tools, which would require higher support. And ultimately, we felt like the value wasn't as strong for how we defined our detailed requirements. So ultimately, we selected the analytics auto capture solution. So Gabe is now going to walk you through some of the key lessons learned.
So Cameron, you did a wonderful job walking through the entire process, but I just want to kind of like peek behind the curtain as a client and try to say what are some of the big takeaways that I had. It isn't a one-size-fits-all process. Stakeholders you identify might be fewer, might be more, you might be using different tools. There's going to be different concerns. So the key there is to understand the elephant, understand the angles, and then attack that with the process that Modea has come up with. Understand the current ecosystem, centralized versus decentralized. If you have a more centralized ecosystem, first, I'm very jealous of you. Second, you might come up with a very different solution. There are no perfect solutions. There's going to be trade-offs. There are a bunch of wonderful analytics solutions out there, all that do different things. They do them well. That's why they exist. You just have to understand what's best for you at the time. The auto capture for us worked very well, again, because of a bunch of stakeholders, right? At the end of the day, even though we're taking the time to understand and make sure that we're picking what's right for us right now, it will take more time to then get back out to all of these stakeholders to talk about what events make sense for them. Yes, we're going to be centralizing some stuff, but there's still going to be some stuff that they care about. As long as we can throw the auto capture tag on right away, even if we don't get to them for 2 or 3 months, that's been being captured while we've been waiting. Again, I will hit home this again. Understand compliance and legal stance from both internal and the vendors that you're talking with. I kind of hit on that earlier, but I will just say that is a key learning. Be informed of your IT and your data warehouse strategy. WashU, over the last couple of years, has been building their internal database, their warehouse. So we're going with that step, but Modea did lay out the idea that you could use Google BigQuery or Snowflake. There are individuals out there that will sign BAAs for your data warehouse as well. So just because Google won't sign one for your standard analytics platforms, they do have platforms that will do that. What I will say is, you're like, why do you need a data warehouse? Google always kept it for free pretty much almost in perpetuity. I know when they switched over, we had to house that. But it's because they're making a bunch of money off of you, and they're going to house that data because it benefits them. But at the same time, it costs a lot of money to house all of that data. So that's an onus that you will need to take on. And then I will say, be honest with your end users. Being an AMC and understanding our agreement with all of our stakeholders, right? We were very decentralized, and they're very used to having their own data, and they covet their data. So be honest with your end users that you're going to start to centralize some of this, but give them the benefits of, while you can still do what you need to do to perform how you need to perform, the mothership also needs to start seeing bigger key trends that will help us in the long term, that will help all of us. I will continue on really quickly with the idea of being reactive versus being steadfast. Allow yourself time and be honest that it's going to take time with some of your folks. Again, when I first started, I came over from the business school. I got into the world of HIPAA and everything that was the HHS rulings, and I was like, okay, and we have 1,200 websites. Let's figure this out. People were screaming, we need our analytics turned back on. We need our analytics turned back on. But when you start to talk to them and say, listen, here's why we're going to take a measured approach, here's what's happening, you do not want to be switching analytics platforms every year or two. That's not going to behoove anyone. So once they start to get that picture and you start to take them through the process, they actually become your advocates. And it's almost like social media, where it's like if someone makes a bad comment, just wait for someone else to be like, well, no, this is actually why they're doing it this way. It helps a lot. You need the right amount of input from the right people. You do not want pitfalls down the road, but then at the same time be confident with that information. You do not want paralysis by analysis. So yes, be measured, but you do need to get your data turned back on. And then one thing that really stood out to me is you do need to be honest with where you are in your analytical journey. Some individuals that are not an AMC, that do not have partnerships with other hospitals, that you're all one entity, you might be on a different trajectory. AMCs can be on a different trajectory and trying to figure out how all of this is going to work together. CDPs are great, and that's awesome. It's like having a Rolls Royce in the garage. But if you currently don't have, you don't understand how you're going to have 10 to 20 people on this team running it, you need to understand where you are in your journey, and you don't want to be paying for a bunch of bells and whistles that you don't use right now, but with the foresight of how will this fit in to a future other products that you might be purchasing in a year or two or three. So just be very honest with yourself and leadership on where you are in your journey.
All right, so you might be wondering, what's next? We have a plan. So after selecting our platform, we immediately shifted focus to implementation. This is because even working with the best tool, it will still be a frustrating experience if you do not have a solid plan to activate it. We developed a phased implementation plan that aligns with both HIPAA compliance needs and operational needs. So this included things like defining key implementation roles, establishing governance plans, and then we provided a recommendation for how to set up the project environment so that when we're done with procurement, we're ready to go, and we've aligned on how to configure our tool. And then lastly, we started to align on scope and business goals too. So again, I mentioned auto capture can be very, data overload. So it's really important that we don't forget this piece and really understand what our questions are, what our goals are, and what we truly need to measure. So yes, we have a platform selected, but more importantly, we have a plan to use it with purpose. So moving forward, our focus isn't on just tracking data. It's on building a sustainable, compliant analytics foundation that empowers better decisions across the entire healthcare journey. With that, thank you, everybody, and we'd like to open it up to Q&A.
Did your hand go up?
Yeah. Question. On your team, what does the team look like that's going to manage the CDP going forward, and what kind of people do you need to have employed by your company?
Yep. So we're actually going to be partnering with our IT, but we'll also have, so it's a web team. We have a few developers. We have a data analyst, and then we actually will be, for now, augmenting some of the bandwidth that we need with Modea as well. Yep. Any other questions on the last day in the last session? Your last chance.
What ETL software do you use? ETL software to move data?
So the question is what our ETL solution is. So the platform that we selected has a managed ETL that connects to several big data warehouse solution. So like the big four. BigQuery, Snowflake. Oh, there's two more. Oh, that's BigQuery. Yeah. There are two more.
It will work well with our internal data warehouse as well. What time's your flight out? Everybody heading to the airport? All right. Well, thank you.